On my wedding anniversary, I just wanted to eat a steak and give my wife the earrings she had been eyeing for a long time. But instead of "I love you," I heard 5 words that shattered my life. I slept with someone else, Robbie. I thought I knew what betrayal was. I was wrong because it turns out that this was just the first crack. And underneath, it was a whole maze of lies that stretched for years, with names, faces, and a terrible truth that I wasn't ready for yet. I didn't scream. I didn't break dishes. I just smiled and asked, "Who's the lucky one?" And I had no idea that the answer would turn my life upside down forever. I'm Robbie, 33, male, and I swear, I can still taste the steak I never finished the night my wife told me she'd been screwing someone else. We were at the same restaurant where I'd proposed 4 years ago, the one with the white tablecloths, dim lights, and overpriced wine we couldn't really afford, but splurged on anyway, because anniversary tradition, she said. Cindy, 31, was wearing the same pearl earrings I'd given her on our second anniversary, the ones I'd thought made her look timeless. Funny how that word feels like a joke now. She'd been quiet all night, picking at her food, barely meeting my eyes. I thought maybe she was nervous because earlier that week she'd missed her period. We'd been trying for a baby for 3 years. 3 years of doctor visits, ovulation tests, heartbreak, and hope. So when she said she had a surprise for me, I thought maybe, finally, it was happening. Instead, she put down her fork, took a shaky breath, and said, "Robbie, I slept with someone else." I laughed, actually laughed. Thought it was one of those weird, nervous jokes she made sometimes when she was anxious, but then she started crying. Ugly crying, and I felt my stomach drop. The restaurant around us kept clinking and buzzing, people eating steak and sipping wine while my entire life quietly split open. My first words were stupid. I said, "Who's the lucky guy?" Like it was a bad sitcom punchline. She looked at me through her mascara tears and whispered, "I fell in love with him." Everything in me just stopped. Like my body froze, but my heart kept trying to catch up. We left before the check even came. She was sobbing in the passenger seat the whole way home while I stared straight ahead, gripping the wheel like it was the only thing holding me to the planet. At home, I didn't yell, didn't throw things. I just asked who it was. She shook her head and said, "I can't tell you. I need to protect him." Protect him. That phrase has been stuck in my skull ever since, echoing like a curse. When she went to bed, I sat on the couch staring at our wedding photo, the one where she's laughing and I'm looking at her like she's the whole world. My hands were shaking, my brain looping the words "protect him" over and over until something inside me cracked. That night, I decided I was going to find out who him was, no matter what it took, and God help me. I had no idea how deep the rot really went.
Hey guys, real quick before we keep going, don't forget to sub and drop a like if you're enjoying the story. Thank you very much. Enjoy watching.
I didn't sleep that night, just sat there on the couch staring at the dark window, my reflection looking like a ghost I didn't recognize. By the time the sun came up, my whole body ached from staying so tense for so long. Cindy came out of the bedroom, wearing my old hoodie, eyes swollen from crying. She tried to say something. "Robbie, please, But I held up my hand. I couldn't even look at her without wanting to vomit. When she left for work, I called my best friend, James, 34, the guy who's been my ride or die since high school. He answered half asleep, voice thick with cereal. "Dude, what's up?" I told him everything. The restaurant, the confession, the crying. He went silent for a full 10 seconds before saying, "Man, I knew something was off. I didn't want to say anything without proof, but there's this guy, Isaiah, from her office. They're always out for lunch together. You should check him out." So I did. I remembered Isaiah's sister, Marielle. We'd gone to college together. She was always posting family photos on Facebook, so I sent her a message. It took her 5 minutes to reply, but what she said blew up. The little hope I'd been clinging to. "Isaiah? No way. He's been dating his boyfriend Carlos for 2 years." I just sat there staring at that message, my brain short-circuiting. "So, not Isaiah." Then she called me, voice soft but serious. "Robbie, if you want to know who she's obsessed with, check whose Instagram stories she watches first. The algorithm always puts that person's circle first." That sounded insane, but desperate people do insane things. That night when Cindy fell asleep, I crept into the bedroom. Her phone was charging on the nightstand. I knew the password. We always did. We'd always said we had nothing to hide. My hands were shaking so hard, I almost dropped it. I opened Instagram, tapped her profile, and there it was, right at the front, Brad Wire. And just like that, every bit of air in my lungs disappeared. Brad was the guy who used to shove me into lockers in high school. The guy who called me names so bad, I still flinch when I hear them. The one person I swore I'd never let near my life again. And now he was the one my wife had chosen. I sat there in the dark, staring at his stupid, smug realtor photos on her screen, my heart pounding like a war drum. She knew what he'd done to me. She knew, and suddenly, her words at dinner made sense. She wasn't protecting him from me. She was protecting herself. Because this wasn't a fling. It was something deeper. And something told me Brad wasn't the only one. The next morning, I didn't bother pretending to sleep. I sat at the kitchen table with cold coffee, waiting for Cindy to wake up. When she finally shuffled out of the bedroom, She looked surprised to see me still there, eyes red, jaw clenched. She tried to smile, but it died halfway. Robbie, can we just talk? About what? I asked, my voice flat. Brad Wire? Her whole body froze. That name hit her like a gunshot. She didn't even try to deny it at first, just went pale, then started stammering. Who told you that? I figured it out, I said. You didn't protect him. You protected yourself. Tears started forming instantly, like a switch had flipped. She reached for me, but I stepped back. I wasn't touching her. Not anymore. Robbie, it wasn't supposed to happen, I swear, she sobbed. He reached out to me about selling his house, and then we just connected again. Connected again. My stomach turned. I told her everything Brad did to me back in high school, the bullying, the humiliation, the day he tripped me in the cafeteria so my lunch spilled everywhere. She comforted me back then, called him a pathetic excuse for a man. And now she was crying in my kitchen because she'd fallen in love with that same man. I couldn't even look at her. I grabbed my keys and left without a word. I drove straight to Brad's real estate office downtown. I didn't have a plan. I just knew I needed to look that bastard in the eye. His receptionist told me he was out showing a property, so I sat in the parking lot for nearly 2 hours, engine running, blood boiling. When his BMW finally pulled up, he saw me and froze. I walked straight up to him. We need to talk, I said. He led me into his office, that fake, polished smile fading. Look, man, I get it. You want to hit me. I deserve it. Then give me one reason not to. He sighed and sat down, rubbing his face. You think I don't feel like trash? What she's doing is messed up, Robbie. I'm done with it. I frowned. What she's doing? He looked up slowly. You think it's just me? She's been with other guys, too. At least 6 that I know of. For a moment, I thought he was lying, trying to deflect, but then he unlocked his phone and handed it to me. Screenshots, texts, pictures, dates going back 2 years. My hands went numb. She told me she couldn't get pregnant, Brad said quietly, that she'd had miscarriages. But the truth is worse than that. He hesitated like he didn't even want to say it, but he did. Those weren't miscarriages, man. She got abortions. Said she couldn't risk having a kid when she didn't know whose it was. My ears rang. My vision tunneled. I barely made it outside before I threw up on the pavement next to his BMW. When I got back home that night, Cindy was on the couch pretending to watch TV. She looked up, voice shaking. Dr. Wire called, she said. The fertility doctor. They think my procedures cause scarring. I might not be able to have kids. I just stared at her. Because I finally understood every tear she'd ever shed, every miscarriage, every night I held her while she cried. It was all built on a lie. She didn't just cheat. She destroyed everything we ever tried to build. I don't remember driving home that night. One second I was standing in Brad's office parking lot with bile in my throat, and the next I was sitting in my car outside my apartment, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me from falling apart. The lights were on inside. Through the window I could see Cindy pacing, her phone in her hand, crying. I didn't go in right away. I just watched her. I thought about how many times I'd believed those same tears, how many nights I'd held her while she sobbed about losing our baby, whispering that we'd try again. All lies, every single one. When I finally walked in, she froze like a deer in headlights. I could smell the wine on her breath. Robbie, she whispered, please, can we talk? I said nothing. I just walked past her into the bedroom, pulled out my jacket from the closet, and felt the small box still inside, the pearl earrings I'd bought her for our anniversary. I'd planned to give them to her that night, before she shattered everything. I held them in my palm until the edges dug into my skin. That was the moment something inside me went cold. The next morning I drove to my brother Alex's place. He opened the door, took one look at my face, and didn't ask questions. Just hugged me. I hadn't cried until that moment. Then it all came pouring out. The dinner, Brad, the abortions, the lies. By the time I finished, Alex's hands were shaking. Robbie, he said, you need to lawyer up. Now. He called a guy he knew, Seth Fallner, divorce attorney. Seth saw me the same day, calm, methodical, professional. He didn't flinch when I told him everything. He took notes, asked about dates, patterns, money. When I was done, he said, you have an airtight case for fault-based divorce. But before you confront her again, you need evidence. All of it. That became my new mission. When Cindy went to work, I tore through our apartment like a detective. Bank statements, credit card charges for hotels I didn't recognize, unfamiliar names in her messages. I photographed everything, uploaded it to the cloud, just like Seth said. That night, while she slept, I took her phone again and screenshotted every message, every DM, every email. She was still talking to 2 of them, still lying even after confessing. The next morning, I told her I was coming down with something and stayed home. She kissed my forehead, said she loved me, then left. I sat there in the silence she left behind and realized something that chilled me more than her betrayal ever could. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was patient, calculated, and for the first time in this whole nightmare, I had the upper hand. Update. Hey everyone, it's been a few weeks since my first post. I didn't think I'd come back here, but a lot has happened and I need to get it off my chest. First off, thank you to everyone who told me not to confront Cindy right away. You were right. If I'd gone in guns blazing, she would have spun it all around, painted herself as the victim. Instead, I kept my distance, played it cool, and started quietly preparing my revenge. The kind that doesn't break the law, but hits where it hurts most. Seth, my lawyer, had told me to document everything. So I did. I kept a log of her phone activity, texts, even how her moods shifted when certain guys messaged her. Every time she smiled at her phone, every time she said, just work stuff, I wrote it down. Then I took it further. I started following the digital breadcrumbs she left all over the internet. Every like, every comment, every so proud of you on another man's post was another clue. That's how I found Daniel, the newest one. And it wasn't just flirtation. I found messages where she told him she was separated, that I was emotionally abusive. She used my name like a curse to justify sleeping with him. I could have confronted her then, but no, I wanted her to feel it. That weekend, I invited Daniel to meet me, told him I was Cindy's husband. He looked like he'd seen a ghost when I showed him our wedding photos, the same time period she told him we were divorcing. He apologized genuinely and said she'd manipulated him too. I didn't hate him for it. We both got played by the same actress. Together, we came up with something better than confrontation: exposure. I created a folder, a digital time bomb. Every text, every DM, every flirty photo, every Mika, I love you she sent to someone who wasn't me. I labeled each file by date and partner. And then I uploaded the entire thing to a cloud drive with one single public link. The next evening, when Cindy came home from work, I was sitting on the couch, calm as ever. I asked her to sit down. She started crying immediately, thinking it was going to be another forgiveness talk. Instead, I handed her my phone. You might want to see this before everyone else does. She took it, opened the link, and went dead quiet. The color drained from her face as she scrolled. Brad, Daniel, the gym guy, the coworker. Every lie in high-definition screenshots. Her first words weren't, I'm sorry. They were, you can't do this, it'll ruin me. And I just said, yeah, that's kind of the point. Then I hit send on the email draft waiting in my outbox. It went to her boss, her HR department, and her mother, the one she idolized. Cindy screamed. Knocked my phone out of my hand, started sobbing, begging, clawing at me like a child. But I didn't move. I didn't raise my voice. Actions have consequences, I told her, picking up my phone. You taught me that. And for the first time since this all began, I felt something that almost felt like peace. The night after I blew the folder up, Cindy lost whatever small restraint she'd been clinging to. She came home like a hurricane, screaming at the top of her lungs in the parking lot, her hands clawing at my chest through the car door. People stopped. Someone filmed it on their phone. She spat words I still hear when I close my eyes. You violated me. You broke into my privacy. You're going to pay for this. She didn't stop at screaming. She started wrecking things. She shoved her shoulder through the glass of the framed wedding photo on our hallway shelf. Glass spiderwebbed across my face, Cindy's head tilted like a statue in the shards. She grabbed the pearl earrings I'd meant to give her and hurled them at the mirror until one pearl dinged and the other fell out. She ripped pages from our travel scrapbook and shredded them on the kitchen table while I stood there, frozen and oddly precise, counting each hit to my ribcage in silence. When I tried to stop her, she twisted and threw me across the room, fingers clawing at my shirt like she wanted to strip everything from me. I didn't retaliate. I didn't need to. By then, James and Alec were already on their way. Text messages and a knock had drawn them to the apartment, and they pulled her off me. The image of Alec holding her like she was the one who'd been stabbed, clutching her shoulders, whispering calm, stayed with me. The world felt upside down. She was the one wrecking our home, and she was crying victim. Within 24 hours, she deployed everything she had learned to weaponize. Frantic calls to HR claiming I'd humiliated her with public shaming. A voicemail to my boss accusing me of harassment. Anonymous posts on neighborhood boards alleging domestic violence. A text blast to our friends with a distorted screenshot of something I said weeks ago. She called the police that night, breathless and shaking, and filed a complaint. Invasion of privacy, she said, and then, when the officer asked who had assaulted whom, she portrayed herself as the one who'd been terrorized. Seth told me not to engage. Kay had me practice breathing techniques until my chest unclenched. This is textbook escalation, she said. She's trying to flip the narrative. Don't feed it. So I recorded everything. I filmed the wrecked photo frame and the ruined earrings. I emailed timestamps and copies of the cloud folder to Seth. I documented the police report, the HR emails Cindy had sent after I exposed her, every new slashed tire, my truck was keyed twice that week, and the threatening anonymous posts. James drove me to the garage after one of the attacks, and we took photos of the tire slashes with his giant, clumsy hands shaking while he held the flashlight. Discovery in the divorce suit started to feel less like legal red tape and more like excavation. Seth subpoenaed bank records. That's when we found the transfers, small stealthy withdrawals. Cindy had been moving out of our joint accounts for months, funneling money to strangers, and to a second savings account she'd opened in her name. About $15,000, laundered in drips. It explained hotel receipts, those late-night dinner charges, the hush money-like transfers to guys we didn't know. It explained how she kept a separate life. We filed for emergency relief, temporary separation, asset freeze, and a protection order against her harassment. Cindy's camp countered with a petition accusing me of illegal phone access and stalking. Classic. Seth ripped through their claims with the precision of someone who'd seen this theater before. He argued the evidence was overwhelmingly hers: screenshots of flirty messages, admissions, the timeline of the so-called miscarriages, and the bank trail. The judge set a fast-track hearing. The next days were a blur of depositions. Cindy brought in friends who cried on cue, neighbors who swore they heard yelling but not hitting. I sat through it all with my hands folded, feeling both hollow and strangely focused, like a man watching the building where his life stood finally be bulldozed and realizing he'd given the wrecking ball a blueprint. Update. Y'all, the fallout went nuclear after the public link. People sent DMs, some supportive, some vicious. One woman messaged that she'd had the same clinic experience. Another called me a monster for hacking my wife's phone. I'd used the password she'd given me over coffee years ago. Someone joked that I should have just set the house on fire. Tempting, not gonna lie, but illegal and messy. A few comments made me laugh through the fog. Burn the wedding album was trending in my notifications until Alec actually did. He ceremonially dropped the burnt pages in a trash can behind the courthouse later, and it felt cathartic. The legal fight is heating up, and it's ugly. Cindy is unpredictable, lashing out and pulling others into her chaos. But the clarity I've been hunting for is finally here. I'm not just surviving this, I'm documenting it. Evidence, therapy, witnesses. That's my armor now. The courtroom smelled like old varnish and coffee, like every place that ever decided someone's life for them. I sat next to Seth, hands folded over the manila folder, with every screenshot, bank statement, and testimonial we'd gathered. Cindy sat across the aisle with her lawyer, mascara tracks still visible. She kept clutching a tissue as if that alone could stitch the rest of her life back together. The judge came in like the weather changed. No drama, just presence. Seth walked through our story slow and clean. The timeline of affairs, the screenshots from Brad and Daniel, the bank transfers hidden in small drips, the public link I'd posted, the harassment she'd mounted afterward. He read the medical timeline too, the 3 miscarriages, the clinic notes we'd subpoenaed, the pattern of terminations, and how Dr. Wire had signed off with minimal counseling. He didn't make any theatrical points. He just put everything down where it had to stay. Cindy's lawyer tried the classic deflection, claimed privacy invasion, called me vindictive, painted her as someone broken after procedures gone wrong. They tried to make the pregnancies into tragic medical events and the secrecy into necessity. But the bank receipts and the booking confirmations, the identical language she used in messages to half a dozen men, and the dates that matched the conception windows were facts, with no patience for spin. When the judge read the verdict, it was like someone turned on a light in a room that had been full of smoke. The court finds sufficient evidence of adultery and financial deception, she said. The hidden transfers, the coordinated concealment of paternity risk, and the emotional manipulation presented are substantial. She ordered Cindy to repay the $15,000 she'd siphoned out of joint accounts within a year, awarded me the car and a larger share of the savings, and denied her claims for spousal compensation. She also signed temporary protections. Cindy was barred from contacting my employer and friends directly. All communication had to go through counsel. Cindy sobbed when the gavel fell, not a remorseful cry, but a howl of someone losing grip. She lunged for me afterward, at the courthouse steps, caught on someone's phone, screaming that I'd destroyed her life, that I'd ruined everything. Security held her back. Alec and James kept me steady while she raged and the cameras clicked. It felt surreal to be both the cause and the calm in the same scene. 2 weeks later, evidence I'd gathered for Lorraine, and later handed to the medical board investigator, started to move. The board notified us that Dr. Wire's clinic would be put under formal supervision pending a full review, mandatory counseling procedure audits, informed consent retraining, and regular compliance checks. Not the wrecking ball justice I'd sometimes imagined, but it was a scar the clinic couldn't hide. Other women messaged me in the days after, stories that echoed mine, fears they'd been pressured, the same, we didn't have timelines in differing voices. I forwarded everything to Lorraine. She said quietly, "This will help others." That line sank in deeper than any victory. Cindy tried more theatrics, anonymous posts, a final attempt to smear me at work by sending doctored screenshots, but the court order and our documentation crushed the momentum. The judge had given us not just rulings, but a map of how to keep the chaos contained. I won in court, but the silence that followed was complicated. It wasn't triumph so much as a room cleared of smoke. I'd won assets and legal truth. She'd been forced to face the practical consequences. The wrecked photo frame still sat on my kitchen counter like a broken altar. I picked up a shard one night, looked at my face in the jagged reflection, and felt something strange. Not healing exactly, but the first honest kind of quiet. The final divorce decree came on a Thursday afternoon, just a thin envelope in my mailbox with my name typed above hers. Robbie Montgomery versus Cindy Montgomery. No drama, no fireworks. Just ink and paper confirming what I'd already known for months. It was over. I sat at my new apartment's kitchen table, staring at it for a long time. The place still smelled faintly of cardboard and paint from when Alec helped me move in. The walls were bare except for a single frame photo of me and him at the lake. Nothing from the old life. No ghosts. I read the court's language over and over. Marriage dissolved, assets divided, debt settled. Simple words for something that had taken pieces out of me. When Alec came by that evening with pizza and a six-pack, I handed him the letter without saying anything. He skimmed it, then looked up at me, waiting for a reaction. I didn't have one left, just exhaled and said, "It's done." He nodded, cracked open 2 beers, and we toasted to surviving. Not to winning, just surviving. The quiet that followed the legal chaos was almost eerie. For weeks, no screaming voicemails, no frantic messages from Cindy's new numbers. Seth told me she'd finally stopped trying to contact me after the last warning from the judge. She started therapy, apparently. Maybe that was her version of healing, or damage control. Either way, it wasn't my problem anymore. I filled my days with small normal things, grocery runs, long walks, dinners at Alec's house with his kids yelling over cartoons. James came by on weekends to help me fix up my car. We didn't talk about her much. It was like mentioning a dead star. Something that once burned, but now was just cold space. Therapy with Kay continued, though it shifted from survival mode to rebuilding. She had this way of grounding me whenever my thoughts spiraled back into the what-ifs. We unpacked the grief piece by piece, the marriages, the pregnancies, the versions of myself that believed every lie. One day she said something that stuck. "You're not healing from losing Cindy, you're healing from losing yourself to her." That sentence followed me for weeks in a good way. Months passed. The medical board investigation against Dr. Wire concluded. The clinic got sanctioned, forced into retraining, supervision, and a permanent note on their record. Lorraine called to tell me personally. "It's not total justice," she said, "but it's real accountability." I thanked her, realizing it wasn't vengeance I wanted anymore. It was closure. 6 months later, I hiked with Flynn, an old friend Cindy had pushed away years ago. He brought his buddy Weston along, a quiet guy with kind eyes and an easy laugh. We spent the day climbing a sunlit trail, joking, sweating, breathing air that didn't hurt to inhale. For the first time since the steakhouse confession, I felt something close to freedom. When we reached the summit, I looked out over the valley, phone buzzing in my pocket, with some meaningless notification, and I turned it off. Weston sat beside me, smiling without expectation, and I realized how far I'd come from that night, the man shaking with rage over a phone screen to someone who could finally sit still. I'm not naive anymore. I know scars don't vanish, but they stop bleeding eventually. And as the sun went down behind the ridge, painting everything gold, I caught myself smiling, genuinely smiling, for the first time in a year. Because after everything Cindy took, the one thing she couldn't destroy was the part of me that still knew how to start over.